Hey everybody, this is Nick with Frost CNC, and today we're going to showcase the one-piece MDF Inset face frame library. Mouthful. Basically, we're going to be able to create beaded or square face frames out of MDF with MDF doors cut right in place. We're going to be able to do decorative toe kick details. We're going to be able to miter them to the ends. We're going to be able to do applied ends in one piece where we can simulate a beaded frame, door within a frame detail. We're going to have some other toe kick options. And so this tutorial is really going to walk you through the whole library all the way through nesting. And so you can essentially create looks like you can see right here. If we go to where the library is purchased on frostcnc.com, you can see in action a beaded frame being cut out. You can see it there being applied to the cabinetry and ultimately completely a finished look, all done in Mozaik. Let's go. So let's go over the import process once you download the library. After unzipping it or extracting it, what you'll see inside is a folder containing the library itself right here. You'll see a guide and a hinge from Bloom, assuming Inset. You'll see a door library right there, and you will see 5 panel and edge tool groups that are very unique to the library to get it to function properly. The only one you'll have to do anything with here is you will have to copy this folder. We'll head over here to where all of our Mozaik data is, either on your C drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, wherever you've got your data. You'll open up product libraries, and inside you'll go ahead, just simply paste it in, and there you can see mine right there. Once we restart or open Mozaik, it will be there ready for us to use. The rest of the importing can get done directly in Mozaik. The door library that you see here, Frost CNC MDF doors, can get imported up here in libraries and doors. Simply hit this list button and go ahead and import right there. What will come in is what you see on screen, kind of a basic starting point for you to run with and maybe make your own. The key to this library is this double door right here. We will talk about why that's needed and how that functions in a different section of the video. We can get the hardware, hinges and guides, imported in here in libraries and hardware. There's our hinge. Go ahead and import it right there. And that will go ahead and get us the proper setback on our mounting plate for flush inset. And our guide can be imported right there. And that also gets us the setback for flush inset for our drawer box and our guide. Now that is assuming a 5/8 drawer box. It's also assuming that you're using the depth adjustable locking devices, which I would highly recommend here. If either of those things are different, you will likely have to adjust these setbacks, and that's something you'll have to figure out as you go. The rest of the importing is done in the optimizer, the edge and panel tool groups. So let's go do that. Over in the optimizer, I'm going to go to libraries and CNC tooling. I'm going to go ahead and go to panel tool groups, and I'm going to go ahead and hit the import button right there, and I'll be able to bring in all my groups. So what you will see is this Frost CNC 1/8 inch cut through, this 1/8 down shear, and 1/8 up shear from the tooling kit that you'll get at frostcnctooling.com. is simply just cutting through on the line with 1/8 inch tools. That'll be used in a few unique spots, and you'll see that in a different section. You can see a generic shaker here using my diamond door kit. And then you'll also see a Frost CNC shaker beaded end panel group. Let's blow this up and take a look at this one. Basically, the idea here is that we're going to be able to create for end panels both a shaker corner cleanup, but also a style with bead right here as well. And so we're going to be able to create both the frame and bead style of door, and pocket of door all in one piece of MDF, and simulating a door within a frame. The edge tool groups are the other key piece of this library. You can see we have one here that is simply just 1/8 inch tools cutting on the outside of a door. That's what's going to allow us to keep a square frame right here. Right? Door here, frame out here. We're also going to be able to use the beaded frame where we're going to cut through with 1/8 inch tools, but then also use the round over and the 30 degree in the kit to create a beaded look on the frame all the way around every one of our door openings. And that's really where the look gets elevated. And so those are the groups. When you import them in, the tooling comes in with them. They will be at the bottom of your list. Go ahead and move them up into your Frost CNC section. Go ahead and put them in your tool sets, and we'll be ready to go. Okay, so let's go over some of the parameters that have been added to this library. So I went up to Libraries and Products. I've selected the library here, and I'm going to hit Parameters. And specifically what I'd like to look at is the Other category. And you can see there's been a lot of controls added here. The first section here relating to the Zeta, that is the Lamello Zeta P2. And it gives you scribe lines for lining up that tool from applied end panels to your frame. So if we look out here at our image where we're going to make this miter joint, we can essentially pre-locate scribe lines to get those to line up. And so you can control the starting and stopping of the scribe lines, the length and depth of them, and then the spacing between them. That will all call out your 90 or 91 degree sharp corner tool, essentially the same tool that's going to be doing the mitering, and so it's going to ease the pre-location. The next step is this decorative toe kick section, and you can see the options we've got here. We can do a radiused, an angled, or a cloud lift style decorative toe, and you can see it's referencing TK1, TK2, TK3. You'll notice the next section is really all of those controls. So it's controlling the elevation, distances, radiuses of all of the decorative toe kick style details. The next section here is choose toe recess design. You can see those options as well. We can skin the inside, or we can actually add an angled toe sweep to that toe area. And so go ahead and give those a shot. And then these bottom three are actually used in the door library, which has been referred to in another section of this video. And that's controlling the hinging on that custom door, ultimately to match what you've set up here on your inset hinge in the job. And so I encourage you to try a few of these things out, flip between the decorative toes, see what they do to your cabinetry, and give them a shot. Okay, so let's talk about the door library that came with the package. A couple main things to point out. This, of course, is a good starting point for you to then make other versions if you have other styles of door you want. There's two keys here. One of them is this double door. If I go ahead and open that up, you can see I've essentially recreated a pair door here, but as a single door in Mozaik size, right? And the way I did that is I set my center style to my outside style 2 1/4, 2 1/4, plus an 1/8 between them, right? So that's how I got 4 5/8. I then sectioned the door, and I went ahead and edited the door. And I added this tool path right through the middle of them, placed with a formula. And I have it selecting that Frost CNC 1/8 cut through, which will cut through with my 1/8 down and my 1/8 up right on the line. Right, so that's ultimately what's dividing it into two doors. So if I go ahead and take a peek, there they are. You can see them cut all the way through. And because of the trick that I showed you in another section, I do in fact have to put the hinging on the right door, right? So that would be the right door here. And so that's where you can control the hinging with some parameters I made in the construction method. But that is critical to the functioning of this library. So if you start to make your own doors, you will have to recreate the tool paths and the hinging you see in this custom door, but it is there for you to see. The other door that is a little unique are the end panels. So if I open those up, you can see here my margins are a lot larger than you would expect. And the reason for that is because of the group that I'm going to apply, actually creating out here 2 1/4 away the false kind of beaded frame look, right? So it's going to essentially look like a door within a frame. And so that's where these margins come from, is 1.5" style rail. Then I have 1/8 gap to my door. Then I have 2 1/4 to the inside. And so that's ultimately how I'm getting the top margin. Bottom margin includes toe kick, and the styles the same way. And so it's kind of a creative use of the door library and some tool groups to create the look you see out here. Which is the door within the frame end panel, all out of one piece of MDF without actually cutting through. You can still see the material inside there. So those are the 2 tricks. If you want to start making your own, make sure you recreate versions of those for your own use. So let's talk about how to choose the frame design. So after you've chosen your MDF doors, the outside edge is really defining whether it is a square frame around each opening or a beaded frame. You can see I can make that choice right here. Square frame and simply cut around each front with 1/8" tools, or the beaded frame where I can cut out with 1/8" tools and also create the bead and a sharp corner in the frame. And so you can see this job is currently set up to have a beaded frame. It is currently using the just kind of generic Frost CNC diamond shaker set with the diamond pocketing tool. And if we switch over to the end and back panels, this is where we're getting that specific base end panel that's coming, was mentioned in another section of the video. And the routed door tool group is the one that not only clears the corner of the shaker pocket, but also creates that door within a frame look at 2 1/4 away from the pocket. So make sure you've got that group selected here. We do not need an outside edge tool here. These are applied panels, right? So we're just going to cut them out normally. So there is the door and drawer setup. And again, the frame detail really comes back to the outside edge chosen for each of the doors or drawer fronts. All right, so let's design a cabinet and put one in the room here. I'm going to put one from both the face frame visible, and we'll bring it out in the middle here, and the MDF frame visible section. Now, what's important to note about these cabinets is, in essence, they're the same thing, right? The same frame is going to go to the optimizer either way. This is really just a visual choice. So if I look at the one on the left, you can see I've got my seams like a traditional face frame, but what it does is it allows me to see the pocket depth of the door. If I go with the MDF frame visible option, you can see the seams in the frame go away. The toe kick detail is the same, but now I just lose the depth in my doors. And this is because Mozaik doesn't understand where the cutouts are in that MDF frame, really have no way to tie those together. It's really just a visual choice, right? Same frame will go to the optimizer, simply up to you. And so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this face frame 1. And we're going to design out this MDF frame cabinet. So let's go ahead and edit. And we're going to design this out like we would any cabinet. We'll go ahead and say 60 wide. I'm going to go to the face and clear. And we're going to start fresh. You can see my blank slate, my blank MDF frame. We'll go ahead and do a split. We'll go ahead and turn this into a top drawer with 2 below. We'll turn this into a top drawer with a pair of doors. Okay. And so there's my cabinet. Turn our layers back on here. Right. And so I'm free to design like I normally would with the face tab. And then also let's make sure our interior tab is set up properly. We do in fact need our ends and our partitions flush to the inside. That's what's getting us all of our drawer guide and hinging. So I'm going to add a partition, flush left. I'm going to add a partition, flush right. And I'll skip the adjustable shelf for now. But now I've got drawer guides on the left. I've got drawer guides and hinges on the right here. And all of my hardware will be done for me. If I flip over to the parts tab, you can see kind of what's going on behind the scenes here. A lot of formulas and a lot of work has gone into these custom parts here. And you can see there's actually 2 custom parameters for the applied ends as well. Not much to see here. Just know that they're functioning in the background. This is what's getting the frame that ultimately makes it to the optimizer. If you start to edit these or rebuild these or mess with these, it's likely going to ruin the item in the library. So I would really try to leave those alone. Okay, so here's our cabinet, and we're ready to cut. So we're going to go now to the essentially sign-off phase. How do we get this ready to send to the optimizer? And then how do we nest? So let's do that in the next section. Okay, so this is really the only main step that needs to be taken that is outside of the norm with how you're used to using Mozaik. One of the issues we run into with doing this style is pairs, right? The way this library works is that when we cut out each front, the way we designed the group, it's actually beading around each opening. Well, what then happens at a pair is it beads around each door, so it really kind of beads into the pair, right? So the pair is where this idea breaks down. And so this is where that special door in the door library that you imported comes into play. And so after a job has been signed off on and we're ready to get this cut ready, we're going to go find every pair in our job. We're going to go into the face. And I want to split this into 2 individual doors. I do not want to consider this a pair anymore. I have to do it with this multiple split button. Vertical, 2 sections. I want doors, and I specifically don't want a style between them. All right, so there's our 2 pieces. I want to make sure this hinging does say left. And so now I'm essentially back to where I was with them separate. And that's ultimately getting my hinging left and right, right? There's my hinge plate left and my hinge plate right. Now, I'm actually going to delete this right-hand door. I'm going to go into parts. I'm going to find the right door. Go ahead and get that out of there. And the reason I'm doing that instead of leaving pair is that still gets me my mounting plate, right? So that position of the plate is still correct. When I go over to face, I'm going to click on my left door now, and I'm going to adjust it over exactly the distance that you see on screen here, 13 and in this case 13/16. So I'm going to adjust this left door right. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the pole, but in the opposite direction, because if I just hit OK, you're going to see the pole end up in a weird spot over here. And so I'm going to adjust that pole back by exactly what I just typed in. And so now we're filling the opening the same, the poles are the same. Now, as long as I can turn that into a double door, we get the best of both worlds. I'm going to override. We're going to pick a new door style, and I'm specifically going to pick that special double door from the library. I do want the beaded and the shaker door, frost pocket tool, okay. And after doing so, we've now essentially kind of worked around exactly what we need. You can see I very much have my double doors, right? But Mozaik sees it as one door. I've simply designed a door in the library that is cut through with 1/8 inch tools. And so Mozaik now is just going to bead around both of them. But once I cut between them, I still get my left and right hinging. Right, so that's how we get around the pair concept. So that cabinet is now absolutely ready to cut. So let's go ahead and send it to the optimizer, and we'll get into nesting in the next section. I'm just going to hit OK. We're going to go ahead and cut list. You can see there's my MDF parts, my MDF face frame, 2 applied doors, and my fronts. Go ahead and hit optimize, and we'll see you in that section. All right, so let's go over kind of the last trick here to get this to all work right. And that is in the parts tab. You can see I've got my frame that made it over, my 2 applied doors, and then the 5 fronts, well 6 if we count this pair, that go with it. You'll notice if I click on one of them, they all get selected, right? And that's because horizontal matching has been turned on and actually saved in each cabinet in that library. And what that does is it makes all of these fronts move together, right? They're going to move as a group. So as I try and get these to line up with the frame here in the next step, it's going to make that process a lot easier, as you'll see. Now, when I nest here, I actually don't want to nest these because these actually go on top of this frame in the next step. And so really all I want to nest is the frames and the applied doors, right? That's what's going to get me the best yield on my material. And so I'm going to select those items. When I go to optimize here, I want to set my part spacing, in this case 13/16, because I've got a lot of miters, right? I want to make sure I'm not cutting into other parts. And so that part spacing represents using a 91-degree miter tool in 3/4 material. I want to go ahead and check optimize selected parts only. That's what's going to allow me to just do the frame and just do the applied doors. So let's go ahead and do that. There are 2 patterns. I'm going to go ahead and click on pattern 1, and you can see my frame there. If I go ahead and hit 3D, you'll see what we've got so far. You can see we've just got a frame. You can see we've got our applied panel with that kind of door within a frame look. And on the back side, you can see our dados for lining up to the case. You can see our miters. And if we zoom in real close, you can actually see these scribe lines on both our applied end, and there's a tiny little scribe line right there on the miter on the frame. And so that's what will allow us to use the Lamello Zeta to line them up when we're done. Okay, so now how do we get our fronts to cut out of here as well? If I go over to view unplaced parts, you can see all of the fronts that I did not nest in the first place are here. And so you can see all the fronts from cabinet 1. If I had multiple cabinets, they'd all be here, grouped as 2, grouped as 3, so on. Now, if I go ahead and bring them in, and I can start to move them around and try and get them placed right, there's 2 main problems. 1, how do I get it perfect? And 2, the spacing's messed up, right? Well, what Mozaik's doing when I bring those in is it's looking back here to determine what the spacing should be, even though they're grouped together. Well, let's think about this, right? If my stiles and rails in this case are 1.5 inches, I also have 1/8 inch gaps between my door and the frame. So really every front should be 1.5 inches plus 1/8 plus 1/8 apart. And so I'm going to go ahead and delete this group and try this again. Before I bring in any of these fronts, we're going to pop back over here to part spacing, and I'm going to set that to what I just said, 1.5 inches plus 1/8 on one side and 1/8 on another. Now, when I bring these groups in, they will be spaced perfectly relative to one another. You can see that if I bring it up here for clarity, right? So they're absolutely sitting where they need to be. And now I just need to line it up with my frame. If I click on the frame and right click, you can see it's telling me the position quarter inch, quarter inch. Well, that tells me that this corner needs to be a quarter plus 1.5 inches plus 1/8 over. So that's 1 7/8. And it needs to be a quarter plus 5.5 plus 1/8 up from the bottom. So let's do that. That would be 1 7/8 from the left and 5 7/8 up from the bottom. And so now with some quick math, I know that I'm perfectly lined up. And so I can continue just to use those offsets, figure out the frame location, and simply offset my parts by the amount relative to my style and rail size. And now, if we go take a look, we're golden, right? We're going to cut out and bead around each one of those doors. We're going to get my hinging and my drawer alignment. And so really everything that the CNC can do will do for this particular look. So good luck using this. For those of you not in the Frost CNC members group on Facebook, please go join that group. A lot of support for this particular library will be there. And go ahead and post some pictures as you use it. Good luck.